That's when she saw it, a flash of light, a reflection from a high vantage point. Her instincts kicked in hard. Before the thought had even finished forming, Claire rolled across the ground, her hand flying to her holster, gun already in hand. She dove behind a rusted container, her pulse hammering in her chest, every muscle tensed. Her heart thundered in her ears, but her focus narrowed to the threat. She'd seen enough in her years as a detective to recognize a sniper's laser. That tiny red dot, blinking in the corner of her vision, was more than just a threat. It was a death sentence. From her cover, she took a steady breath and fished out her camera, zooming in on the suspected rooftop. Her fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted the focus. A flash of movement caught her eye, a figure hunched over, adjusting a scope. Jackson scowled under his breath, his cover blown. He'd been careful, but not careful enough. Damn detective. He narrowed his eyes, locking onto her position. His finger hovered over the trigger, feeling the familiar, reassuring weight of the rifle against his shoulder. This was supposed to be clean, quick, and final. No mistakes. He exhaled slowly and squeezed the trigger, his Remington 700 sending a .308 round screaming toward Claire's cover. The bullet struck the container with a deafening clang, vibrating the metal and nearly knocking Claire off her feet. Her ears rang from the impact, and her body tensed as adrenaline surged through her veins. Damn it, she hissed under her breath. She couldn't stay here. He'd line up another shot, and this time, she might not be so lucky. Up on the rooftop, Jackson grimaced. He should have taken her out by now. She's too good, too fast. He cursed again under his breath, quickly dismantling the Remington 700 with the precision of a professional. He couldn't afford to get caught, not yet. Not before his task was complete. With swift, efficient movements, he packed up his gear and began his retreat, slipping into the maze of rooftop units and fire escapes. But he knew one thing for sure: this wouldn't be the last time they crossed paths. He'd make sure of it. Claire's ears still rang from the impact, the metallic taste of fear thick in her throat. But fear didn't paralyze her. It fueled her. She peeked out from behind the container, just in time to catch a glimpse of her sniper, dark figure, tall, quick on his feet, disappearing behind an air conditioning unit. He's running, she muttered to herself, adrenaline sharpening her focus. Her fingers tightened around her gun. But not for long. As soon as the noise died down and she could move without drawing fire, Claire darted from behind the container. Her body screamed at her to stay hidden, but that wasn't an option. Not now. Not when she had him in her sights. She moved swiftly, zigzagging toward the fire escape at the base of the building where the sniper had been perched. She knew she needed to get up there, to see what he'd left behind. A sniper like him didn't make many mistakes, but maybe, just maybe, he'd slip up. Each step echoed on the metal stairs as she climbed, her breath coming in ragged gasps. But even as her pulse hammered in her chest, she couldn't shake the feeling gnawing at her gut. This was personal. Why was he after her? Why now? When she reached the rooftop, she crouched low, scanning for signs of movement. The sniper was gone, but his presence lingered like a ghost. Her eyes moved to the spot where he had been. Nothing. No shell casings, no gear. He'd been methodical, precise. But Claire wasn't just looking for physical clues. She was searching for something deeper, something that would explain why. The lecture hall buzzed with excitement. Marcus Bell as he spoke. His voice carried through the room, smooth and confident, weaving stories of ancient rituals and forbidden knowledge. And that is how the Sanctum of Aether first emerged in the shadows of history. Bell explained, gesturing to the intricate diagrams on the projector screen behind him. Their rituals were not just acts of devotion, but a means to harness powers beyond our understanding. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. The students leaned in, hanging on his every syllable. One student raised a hand, eyes wide with curiosity. "Dr. Bell, do you think any of their rituals are still practiced today?" Bell's lips curled into a knowing smile. "That's the real question, isn't it? While many believe such practices have faded into obscurity, there are always whispers. Rumors that some traditions persist in secret. The hall erupted in hushed murmurs and exchanged glances. Bell had them hooked. But, he continued, raising a hand to silence the chatter, that is a discussion for another day. For now, let us appreciate the historical context and understand the profound impact these rituals had on their society. He moved to close his lecture with an anecdote about an ancient text he'd discovered in Ravensberg University's archives, a text that detailed a ritual believed to summon entities from beyond our realm. The students listened intently, their faces a mix of fascination and awe. As Bell finished his story and thanked them for their attention, the room erupted in applause. It was a thunderous sound that echoed off the walls and seemed to linger long after it had died down. Thank you, Bell said with a nod, gathering his notes. Remember, our understanding of history is ever evolving. Keep questioning, keep seeking. With that final piece of advice hanging in the air like an incantation, Bell stepped away from the podium and made his way toward his office. Students crowded around him as he left the lecture hall, eager to ask more questions or simply express their admiration for his insights. He responded with polite smiles and brief answers but kept moving steadily toward his sanctuary. Finally reaching his office door, he turned the key and slipped inside. The applause still echoed faintly in his ears as he shut the door behind him. Inside, peace and quiet awaited, along with piles of books and papers that spoke of even darker secrets than those he'd shared today. The study was dimly lit, the walls lined with old tomes, ancient texts, and brittle parchment. Dust hung thick in the air, making every breath feel weighted. Marcus Bell sat hunched over his desk, the flickering light from the candle casting jagged shadows across his gaunt features. His hands trembled as they hovered over an open book, the Codex of Transcendence, its pages weathered, covered with symbols that seemed to pulse under the soft glow. His eyes, red-rimmed from lack of sleep, moved feverishly over the text, rereading the same lines over and over, as if hoping that this time they would reveal something new. But they didn't. Bell had hit a wall, and the frustration gnawed at him like a festering wound. The ritual was near, and he hadn't yet unlocked the final piece. His fingers dug into his temples, massaging away the mounting pressure in his head. He could feel it, something dark, something ancient, lurking just beyond his grasp, waiting to be freed. It called to him in his sleep, in his waking hours, whispering promises of power, of transcendence. The thought flickered briefly in his mind before he banished it. The price was irrelevant. What were a few lives weighed against the survival of the world? The door creaked open, and Daniel Hayes entered quietly, his face pale, his movements tentative. Bell didn't look up, his gaze fixed on the page, his voice a hoarse whisper when he finally spoke. You see, Daniel, Bell began, his tone patient, almost gentle. There are things in this world that we cannot understand. Forces that have existed since the dawn of time, powers that are beyond our comprehension. He turned to face Daniel, his eyes alight with fervor. The Codex. It's the key. It's not about power or sacrifice for the sake of it. It's about balance. There are things that humanity should never have touched, never have disturbed. We're on the brink of something catastrophic. If we don't finish this ritual, if we don't appease the ancient ones, the world as we know it will cease to exist. Daniel's brow furrowed in confusion. But what if you're wrong, Marcus? What if these are just the ramblings of a madman who... Bell's smile vanished, and in its place came a flicker of anger. Do you think I haven't asked myself that question 1,000 times? He slammed his fist onto the desk, making Daniel flinch. Do you think I haven't considered that maybe I'm mad? But I've seen the signs, Daniel. The omens. They're everywhere. His voice softened again, but his eyes remained wild. I've studied the Codex for years. I've pieced together fragments from forgotten civilizations. The same rituals, the same patterns. The disappearances, the storms, the deaths, everything is connected. The cult, the Sanctum of Aether, they don't understand the full picture. They think they can control it, but they're wrong. They'll unleash something that can't be stopped. Bell's hands trembled as he sat down again, his eyes fixed on the codex in front of him. I'm the only one who knows what's coming. The only one who can stop it. Sacrifices have always been necessary. Every civilization understood that. Blood for balance. He looked up at Daniel, his eyes pleading for understanding. We're not murderers, Daniel. We're saviors. This is bigger than any of us. For a long moment, Daniel said nothing, the weight of Bell's words sinking in. He could see the madness in Bell's eyes, but there was also something else, something terrifying. A belief so unshakable that it had consumed him completely. Bell stood slowly, his face softening again. You can, Daniel. You must. There is no one else. Without you, everything falls apart. We are too far along to turn back. He walked over to Daniel and placed a hand on his shoulder, squeezing it gently. This burden is ours to bear. And when it's over, when the world is safe, you'll understand. You'll see that everything we've done was for the greater good. Daniel's throat tightened as he nodded, not because he believed, but because he was too deep to escape. Bell returned to his desk, the weight of his obsession settling back over him like a shroud. As Daniel turned to leave, Bell called out softly. Stay close tonight. The final phase is approaching. I'll need you. Daniel paused at the door, casting one last glance at the man he had once admired. Now, he wasn't so sure. Later that afternoon, Claire and Ethan found themselves in the dimly lit office of Marcus Bell at Ravensberg University. The room was a veritable maze of ancient texts, faded maps, and strange artifacts, each shelf crammed with relics that seemed to hum with history. The musty scent of old leather-bound books and parchment filled the air, mingling with the faint, earthy smell of dust that had settled in the corners of the room. Bell himself was standing by a tall bookshelf, his back to them as he thumbed through the spines of several old tomes, his movements slow and deliberate. He wore a well-tailored tweed jacket that seemed to blend seamlessly with the antiquated surroundings, and his neatly trimmed beard only added to the air of academic authority that surrounded him. Detectives, Bell greeted them without turning around, his voice deep and smooth. I was wondering when you would come to see me. Claire exchanged a glance with Ethan before stepping further into the room. Doctor, we're investigating a series of disappearances that we believe are linked to the Sanctum of Aether. We were hoping you could provide some insight. At the mention of the cult, Bell's hand stilled on the spine of a particularly worn book. Slowly, he turned to face them, his sharp eyes gleaming with interest. Without a word, he moved to his desk and opened one of the thick volumes, the pages crackling as he flipped through them. The Sanctum of Aether, Bell began, his voice quieter now, almost reverent. Their history is long, and their influence subtle. They have existed for centuries, operating in the shadows, passing down their knowledge through carefully chosen initiates. Ethan leaned forward slightly, his brow furrowed. What kind of knowledge? Bell's gaze flicked up, meeting Ethan's. The kind that seeks to transcend the boundaries of our reality. The Sanctum believes in piercing the veil between worlds, in making contact with something beyond. The way Bell spoke of the Sanctum, it wasn't just academic curiosity. There was something personal in his tone, something that hinted at deeper involvement. And these disappearances? Claire asked. How are they connected? Bell's hand moved to a series of photographs on his desk, images of symbols and runes carved into the ground around the crime scenes. His finger traced the lines of one of the symbols, his expression distant. These markings, they are not merely decorative. They are part of a ritual, an invocation meant to open the way. To what? Ethan pressed. Bell's gaze sharpened, his eyes narrowing slightly. To the other side. To something powerful. Bell's fingers lingered on the photograph, tracing the intricate lines of the symbols as if they were sacred. His voice, low and reverent, filled the room with an unsettling energy. These symbols, he began, his tone more of a whisper now, are part of an ancient language, older than written history itself. He lifted his gaze to meet Claire's and Ethan's, his eyes gleaming with something akin to awe. They are called eldritch runes. Not merely symbols, but conduits, keys to unlocking power that most can't comprehend. They allow communication with forces that exist beyond our reality. Claire leaned in, her skepticism simmering just beneath the surface, but her curiosity undeniable. Her eyes fell on the next photograph Belle held, a series of runes arranged in a circular pattern around a makeshift altar. The air seemed to thicken as she studied it. This, Belle continued, his voice thick with reverence, is a convergence circle. When properly formed, it serves as a focal point, concentrating energy. It's a portal of sorts. Each symbol is a key, each designed to unlock an aspect of a ritual far older than anything in recorded history. Ethan's eyes flickered to Claire, and for a brief moment, doubt danced in his gaze. But Claire remained focused, her expression intense as she considered the implications. "And the coins we found at the crime scenes?" Claire asked, her voice steady but laced with an edge of tension. Belle nodded slowly, as if anticipating the question. He reached into his desk drawer and retrieved a small, velvet pouch. The soft thud of the coins spilling onto the desk cut through the silence like a knife. Tarnished, worn by time, each one was etched with the same strange symbols that now felt all too familiar. "These," Belle said, his fingers hovering over the coins as though they held some dark secret, "are ether coins. They're not just artifacts, they are offerings. Each coin is imbued with spiritual energy through ritual, used to appease the entities the sanctum seeks to contact." He paused, a flicker of something darker crossing his face, and for a brief moment, Claire couldn't tell if it was fear or reverence. "The coins are a form of currency in their world. In ours, they're tools, manipulators of spiritual forces. Crafted by the sanctum's initiates, each one is an invitation to something beyond." Ethan picked up one of the coins, turning it over in his hand, his fingers tracing the strange symbols. It felt heavier than it looked, almost as if it pulsed with some hidden energy. "Where do they come from?" he asked, his voice lower than usual, as if something about the coin unsettled him. "They're handcrafted," Belle replied, his voice quiet but firm. "Each one imbued with intention, charged with energy that has been accumulated over countless rituals." His fingers twitched slightly as if just the thought of it affected him. "These aren't just remnants of the past. The sanctum still uses them today in their ceremonies." Ethan shot a glance at Claire, his brow furrowed. Something about the way Belle spoke, the way his eyes gleamed when talking about the rituals, left an uncomfortable feeling between them. Claire's mind raced. This wasn't just a cult playing dress-up. They were dealing with something far more organized and dangerous. Belle then spread out another set of photographs, this time showing carved stone tablets and wooden idols, each one covered in intricate markings, symbols that twisted and looped like dark, ancient art. "These carvings," Belle continued, "are physical representations of their beliefs. The sanctum uses them to anchor their intentions, to tether their rituals to our reality." The room seemed to close in, the weight of the information pressing down on Claire. Her skepticism was fading, replaced by a slow, creeping dread. "So, every element, the symbols, the coins, the carvings, they all serve a purpose in these rituals?" "Precisely," Belle said, his voice thick with certainty. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "It's a complex system, detective. Every symbol, every object, every coin plays a role. It's not just superstition. It's science to them, a method to bridge the gap between our world and theirs." A heavy silence fell over the room, broken only by the distant hum of the precinct. Claire's mind was spinning, trying to grasp the full implications of what Belle was saying. The symbols, the rituals, the power that the sanctum believed they could tap into. It wasn't just madness. There was something tangible here, something they could no longer ignore. Ethan set the coin down carefully, as though it had burned him. "If what you're saying is true, then this isn't just about stopping a few murders. These people, this cult, are trying to open doors to something else." Belle's face darkened, the faint trace of a smile curling at the edge of his lips. "They're not trying, detective. They already have." The city hummed around them, oblivious to the quiet tension simmering in the shadows. Claire and Ethan strolled down the narrow, dimly lit street, their steps casual but their minds sharp. Every rooftop, every window, could be hiding death. Their movements were rehearsed, precise. Bait. Overhead, their own snipers were in place. Hidden among the city's aging structures, they scanned every corner of the skyline. Around them, the SWAT team lay in wait, concealed in alleys and doorways like wolves ready to pounce. Claire glanced at Ethan, who nodded, his expression unreadable but the tension evident in the tightness around his jaw. "We're exposed," Ethan muttered under his breath, his eyes darting to a cluster of rooftops across the street. "Just a little longer," Claire replied, trying to suppress the tremor in her voice. Her pulse thudded in her ears, a steady reminder of how close they'd come to losing everything. Ethan had almost been killed by this man before, Jackson. And now, they were daring him to try again. A minute stretched into eternity, each second marked by the subtle sweep of the snipers, watching for the slightest movement. Sweat beaded on the back of Claire's neck despite the cool night air. She couldn't shake the thought of how it had felt to see Ethan bleed out on that factory floor, the sniper's bullet only inches from taking his life. Then, a subtle signal crackled in her earpiece. The spotters had found him. "Rooftop, 2 buildings over." "Got him," the voice whispered. "Move now." The SWAT team moved in like a ghost, swift and silent, heading toward the building. Claire and Ethan took cover behind a parked car, weapons ready. Their sniper was setting up, trying to get a clear shot on Jackson. But something felt off. "Wait," Claire whispered, her instincts prickling. "He's too good to get caught this easily." She wasn't wrong. Suddenly, a shot rang out. A sharp crack that sliced through the quiet like a whip. Claire's heart leaped into her throat as she saw their sniper on the opposite rooftop crumble, his body going limp as the rifle slid from his grip. Another crack, another shot fired. The second sniper fell before he even had a chance to react. "Damn it!" Ethan cursed, ducking lower. "He's onto us." Jackson wasn't just good, he was deadly. He turned the trap back on them, picking off their people one by one, like pawns in a game he was winning. The SWAT team breached the building, but before Claire could signal, more shots echoed through the alley. Jackson had already engaged them. The radio crackled with hurried, panicked voices. 2 officers down. "He's moving!" one voice shouted over the channel. Claire's chest tightened. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Jackson was slipping through their fingers again. "Claire, we need to get out of here." "No," Ethan urged, his eyes scanning the street. But she wasn't ready to give up, not yet. Not after everything. They moved quickly, taking cover in the alley, trying to anticipate where Jackson would come from next. The SWAT team converged on the building, but Jackson was already bleeding them. He was fast, lethal. And then it happened. Jackson emerged from the building, limping slightly but still dangerous, his sidearm in hand. He moved like a predator, checking corners, dispatching another SWAT member who stumbled into his line of fire. His movements were precise, calculated. But as he turned to leave, he froze. Standing just 20 feet away, guns raised, were Claire and Ethan. For a moment, no one moved. Jackson's cold, sharp eyes flicked between them, calculating. Blood dripped from a wound on his arm, but his grip on the gun was steady. Claire felt the weight of her weapon in her hands, the memory of Isabel Larson's unsolved case, and her own failures tightening around her chest. "Drop it," Ethan said, his voice low, controlled. His eyes never wavered from the man in front of them. Jackson didn't flinch. "You're not going to shoot me, detective. You need me alive." Claire's finger hovered over the trigger. She wasn't sure if he was right, but she knew she had to make a choice. Jackson was right about one thing: he was more valuable alive. He knew things. Things that could blow open this case, the cult, the murders. But her heart pounded with the weight of her failures, the fear of what letting Jackson live could cost her. Isabel Larson. Gone. The whispers of her unresolved guilt coiled in her mind, mixing with the present moment. "Drop the gun, Jackson!" Claire's voice wavered but didn't break. Jackson's lips curled into a thin smile. You're weak, Novak. That's why you're standing there, waiting. You want justice, but you don't have it in you to pull the trigger. The words cut deep, feeding into the doubts Claire had been burying for years. Is he right? She wondered for a fleeting second. Jackson took a step forward, his eyes locked on Claire's. Ethan's gun trained on him, but it was Claire's shot that mattered. He knew she wouldn't take it. And for a moment, Claire wondered too. But then, Ethan stepped in front of her, shifting ever so slightly. Don't, he whispered, so low Jackson might not have even heard. But Claire did. We're not letting him get away. Not again. The stillness shattered in an instant. Jackson moved first, lunging sideways, his gun raising to fire. Claire's instincts kicked in, time slowing to a crawl. The sound of gunfire exploded in the tight space of the alley, sharp and deafening. Jackson fired, the shot missing her by inches. Claire pulled the trigger, the recoil jolting up her arms as her bullet found its mark. Jackson staggered, his hand gripping his side as blood poured from the fresh wound. His gun fell from his hand, clattering uselessly to the ground. He stumbled back, his strength fading, but his eyes never lost their cold, deadly focus. Ethan rushed forward, kicking Jackson's weapon away before grabbing his collar and shoving him against the wall. You're done, he spat, breathless from the rush of adrenaline. Jackson's face twisted into something like a smirk, even through the pain. You're too late, Carter. You think this is over? He let out a grim chuckle. It's just beginning. For a moment, Claire stared at the man slumped against the wall. The tension in her shoulders slowly unwound, but her pulse remained heavy in her ears. Jackson was right. This wasn't over. The Sanctum of Aether still loomed over them, dark and unseen, waiting in the shadows. Jackson's capture was just a small victory, but the war was far from one. Ethan's eyes met Claire's, his expression hard but relieved. We've got him, he said, but the weight of his words didn't match the gravity of the situation. Claire nodded, though a hollow pit of dread gnawed at her. They'd caught the sniper, but what came next would be far worse.